What's good? Brian Tong here, and we get a first look at potentially how thin the iPhone 17 Air will be, what's next for Apple's Siri team, and Netflix builds an Apple Store replica, and more. Now, we've heard all of the rumors and seen renders and measurements, but Unbox Therapy got his hands on some newer dummy models that give us a lot better idea of how thin the iPhone 17 Air will be compared to the other iPhones, and it's thin, real thin. The report's expected to be around 5.5 millimeters thick, with a wider, thicker area for the camera that doesn't even care if it takes a page from the Google's Pixel design, or more than a page. Now, Apple put a strong reinforcing spine in this new thin iPad Pro we had recently, and I'm gonna guess something similar will be done here, but we'll really see how strong it is, because if you wanna bend something, it will bend. Now, more images of dummy units from Sonny Dixon show us how it's almost as thin as its buttons when compared to the rest of the iPhone 17 lineup dummy models, and rumors claim it will also have titanium and aluminum chassis to ensure that it's strong enough to prevent another bend gate scenario. Now, it also confirms everything that I've said about how I'd feel about it. Incredible design, super sexy and thin, but I'll miss the camera functionality, and it remains to be seen how good the battery life will be. So that's a quick peek of how thin it might be based on these dummy models that come out every year. You're probably gonna see a lot more of these type of videos with, hey, I got the dummies, hey, I got the dummies. Yeah, it just is what it is. Now, here's a data point that might be a reason that this iPhone 17 Air will surprise, and I'm sure Apple has seen this stuff as well. CIRP just published the US sales data for iPhone in the first quarter of 2025, and it showed a snapshot of how each iPhone 16 model has performed. And the big takeaway, well, I'm gonna leave this graphic up for you for a while so you can see it for yourself, but while the 16 Pro Max stayed about the same, it did dip 2% in sales from the 15 Pro Max to the 16 Pro Max when comparing Q1 of this year and Q1 of last year. The iPhone 16 Pro dropped 5% compared to the iPhone 15 Pro in sales. So the two Pro models combined, they dropped 7% year over year. But where does it look like most of that went? Well, the iPhone 16 base model, that jumped up 6% compared to the base model iPhone 15 if you're comparing the same quarter as last year. So bottom line, this year, a lot of buyers went for the cheaper model in Q1 compared to last year. And if that trend continues, and because people are spending less in this tighter economy, and the base model iPhone really is more than good enough for most people. And we're not talking about the techies that upgrade to the newest phone every year, which there are a lot of you here. We're talking about the general consumer, right? Apple made the iPhone 16 base model more compelling, and that worked. And this leads me to believe that the iPhone 17 Air at a lower price point than the Pros with an all new design, that could really be a successful formula for that iPhone launch in 2025. And knowing how people react to a new iPhone design, that already gives it more juice. And these consumer trends, they are ripe for the 17 Air to be a success and not a flop, as some people might be saying, because people are moving away from the Pro because of how much it costs. Now, a new report from Ming-Chi Kuo claims the iPhone 17 Air will also have 12 gigs of RAM like the Pro models, where previously the expectation was that only the Pros will have it. This is a big jump up from the iPhone 16 lineup that is equipped with 8 gigs of RAM across the board, and then 8 to 12 now. We're talking about a significant increase. So we'll just have to wait and see how this all plays out in September. Now, in my last video, I talked about the rumored new Apple Vision Air, and we've known for years that Siri needs a major upgrade. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman reported earlier that Mike Rockwell is leading the new Siri initiative, and you've seen him before in keynotes as the chief for the Apple Vision Pro. Now, in his latest report, Rockwell has now been overhauling the Siri management team to step up the development of Apple intelligence features. Gurman says he's replacing or demoting managers who previously worked on Siri after the obviously embarrassing fallout of features that were promised in Apple Intelligence at WWDC 24 that still haven't happened. Now, Rockwell, he's basically replacing Siri managers with members of the Vision Pro software group, and also restructuring Siri teams that handle speech, understanding, performance, and user experience. Now, the report claims some of Apple's top software engineering talent has been allocated to focus on Siri. This is a good thing. Now, Rockwell is still overseeing the development of Vision OS while working on Siri as well. And the way you know Rockwell is really the right person inside of Apple for the job, in Gurman's earlier reports, he said that Rockwell was never shy about criticizing Siri, and for years, he had pitched ideas to senior VPs to overhaul the voice assistant. Even during development of the Apple Vision Pro, he believed Siri could be a central way to control the device, but it was so limited that they went for a system primarily using hand and eye control. Now, there was even a 2-year-old report that mentioned how there was disappointment in the demos the Siri team created to show how Apple's voice assistant could control the Vision Pro. Siri obviously did not become a central part of the experience, but a better, capable, and smarter Siri, this would help every single Apple device in their ecosystem, and Apple needs it too. You know, it could have been a big part of Vision Pro, but it's not right now. But a significantly improved Siri, look, let's be real here. This is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. We're talking probably years, not months, to really get it where they want it to be. So Apple, again, I got to remind you, they legitimately had a lead in the space with Siri on the iPhone 4S in 2011. So what's that, 14 years ago? But even back then, that was actually one of the iPhone upgrade years that I skipped because it just wasn't compelling enough for me to buy a brand new iPhone at the time. And unfortunately, it has done little to show major improvements since then. But this fresh voice in Rockwell, who has criticized Siri, this is absolutely the right kind of person to shake things up, and it's exactly what it needs and what Apple needs right now. And you can't talk about Siri without talking about Apple Intelligence when it comes to making significant improvements. Now, after an inquiry from the US National Advertising Division, Apple Intelligence features have now been removed with any mentions of being available now from their website page. It was recommended that Apple stop or modify the available now text on the Apple Intelligence website because it falsely gives the idea to people that all of the features it lists are available at that time. Now, Apple did disagree with the NAD, but they did decide to follow the recommendations. So here's what it looked like before, and here's what it looks like now with available now being removed. Now, in my videos, I've made it a point to bring all of us in this tech world sometimes down to earth a little bit because yes, we are mostly those hardcore people, the tech fans that really care about this stuff, but then there is the rest of the world that maybe more casually follows this stuff, buys products that work for them, and never get too deep into the weeds, and both are okay. But a recent survey from investment firm Morgan Stanley, it kind of surprised me, right? In an online survey that ran in February and March, they asked thousands of consumers to indicate the maximum amount of money per month that they would be willing to spend for unlimited access to Apple Intelligence. The survey says that 1,400 people of the 3,300 respondents were current iPhone owners. 450 of those people were iPhone 15 Pro and iPhone 16 model owners, which have Apple Intelligence. Now, here are the results of that survey. You can see the breakdown that 22% just don't care, really, and would pay $15 or more per month for access to Apple Intelligence, while the largest percentage, 30% of respondents, would pay $10 to $14.99 a month for full access to Apple Intelligence. That's over half of respondents saying that they are willing to pay $10 or more for Apple Intelligence access. This survey basically did Apple's work for them, and this is without Apple Intelligence currently even delivering on its most important features that we're waiting for. I'm just surprised because it tells me that for many consumers, there is really a general trust that they have for Apple. And that's something that is built over years and years of delivering for a consumer. And I'm going to assume that many of these people didn't know exactly what Apple Intelligence might even be and what it has delivered on or not delivered on so far. Because bottom line, there are still so many people that are willing to pay for Apple Intelligence in some of a sort of a subscription fee. In fact, more people are willing to pay something versus those who chose that they didn't want to pay anything at the moment. And I look at that breakdown and I think that the 6% who said it's too early to tell are probably the smartest people in that whole survey, because why would you even be ready to hand over any kind of money monthly for an unfinished product that admittedly dropped the ball? Now, the survey claims it represents the general population in the US in terms of age, gender, and region. So we'll see how Apple turns Apple Intelligence around and how fast that happens. Mike Rockwell's team will be part of that, but we'll know how they want to tell that story, or I guess you could say control that narrative, based on what we see at WWDC 25, or maybe in September here as well. But my hunch is gonna focus on hardware. Now, here's a fun little story. Why is Netflix building a replica Apple Store? Well, it's because they needed to recreate one for its newly released thriller, iHostage, that is a dramatization of a real-life hostage situation that happened in Apple's retail store in Amsterdam in 2022. Now, of course, Apple isn't gonna let a major film production happen in a live, active, operating Apple store. So the Netflix production team reconstructed a full-scale replica of the Amsterdam store and used a virtual studio to even replicate the environment around the store through its windows. The interior was done on a soundstage and then surrounded by a high-resolution LED wall. I've personally experienced being in one of these types of volumes at Sony Studios, and it's pretty amazing and incredible what they can do with lighting and reflections. We also heard a lot about setups like this when they were shooting The Mandalorian the first time I was doing production. Now, iHostage, this is available to watch on Netflix now. This is not an ad or a promo. I just thought it was a cool story to show you. Like, I wouldn't mind a little corner that looked like an Apple store. You can do a lot of stuff with that. All right, that is gonna do it for this video. Hey, if you like what you see, give me that thumbs up, subs up, and hit that notification bell, ding, to get all my latest videos when they drop. And if you want more of that Apple goodness, you can check out my weekly Apple Bits XL audio podcast with the latest stories and special guests. Plus, you can support all my content with an ad-free version of the podcast, early access to my content, and exclusive content at patreon.com/BrianTong. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace and love.